So I can officially welcome you to part 2 of Zoom Basics and Best Practices. So I'm going to share my screen so that we can, why don't I see? Oh, looks like my browser crashed. Hold on one second. Where did it go? There it is. Okay. So does everybody see my presentation, Zoom Basics and Best Practices? Great. It's a good sign already. So we're going to jump to part 2. So the first thing that I want to talk about is screen sharing. Screen sharing can be glitchy, as you just saw. It can be complicated. There's a lot of steps involved. So to start off, if you look at the bottom of your Zoom window, you'll notice a green share screen button. And if you don't see a button there, let me know. Okay. Next to the share screen button, you'll notice a little caret mark right there. If you click that caret mark, it opens up a little menu. You may not see that on your end because I'm the host, but when you are the host, this is what you will see. So there's advanced sharing options. You can set it so that only one person can share at a time, or you can have multiple participants sharing simultaneously. I recommend keeping it on one participant can share at a time because that keeps everything neat and organized and less confusing for everybody. If you have multiple people trying to share simultaneously, it can get quite messy. The other thing you can do here is you can select advanced sharing options, which opens up this little window. And again, it gives you the same option, how many participants can share at the same time, but it also asks who can share. So it starts, by default, it only allows the host to share their screen, but you can allow participants to share their screen. However, there is also the security option where you can also allow participants to share their screen. By default, who can start sharing when somebody else is sharing is only host.
Well, let me ask, right now you're an only host. That's how you're coming across to us, right?
I don't remember how this room is set. These are screenshots that I took previously. So this is not from this meeting. This is from a meeting I did previously.
And excuse me, do you want questions as you're going, or do you want us to wait?
Questions as we go is perfectly fine.
So if you have a class and you'd like to have, one student present something and then another, you go to that arrow and select one at a time?
Well,
click on the name?
One at a time is selected by default. You don't need to do that.
And then how do I allow that person to share if they're not a host?
So that you do have to go, you can either click on security and then click on allow, or you can click on advanced sharing options, and under who can share, you select all participants.
Okay.
So there's two different ways of doing it. Once you have your settings the way you want it, you can click share screen, that big green share screen button, and you'll see a window pop up that looks something like this. That window will have a number of different squares or rectangles in them. Depending on whether you have a Mac or Windows, they may have different text underneath them. For example, if you want to display everything you see on your screen, on a Mac, you select desktop. On a PC, on Windows, it will say screen. But it's the same thing. And oftentimes what you will see here, if you have other people on the meeting with you when you're doing this, you'll see their faces because it's going to show you everything you currently see on your screen. In this case, when I took this screenshot, this is what was on my screen. The other things you have here are whiteboard, and a whiteboard is just like what the name, what you think it is. It's just like using a whiteboard in person. It's a blank white canvas, and you have a bunch of annotation tools, which I'll show you in a moment, that you can use to write on that board. You can, if you want to, you can share, because this is a Mac, it gives you the ability to share your iPhone or iPad if it's plugged in, or via AirPlay. But if that's not important to you, just ignore those. And then underneath that, you'll see any other open windows. So for example, if you have PowerPoint open, you'll see the PowerPoint window. If you have a browser open, you'll see the browser window. If you have multiple browser windows open, you'll see each of them. You want to be very careful though, because you can select an individual window. So I could select Chrome and an instance of the Chrome browser, and everything I see in that browser will show through in the screen share. But if I then want to open up a PDF in Acrobat or a Word doc or a PowerPoint, I would have to stop the share and start over again. If I show my desktop, then none of that matters. You can show whatever you want. You can go do PowerPoint, then you can do Word doc, then you can do a Chrome page, and then you could do something else, a QuickTime movie, without having to stop and start again. The downside to desktop is that they see everything. So if your desktop is covered with files, they'll see that. And I don't know that you want them to see that, but that's just something to understand about sharing your desktop or sharing the screen. The other thing I want to point out here is this little button on the lower left-hand side. It says Share Computer Sound. If you want to share a video through Zoom, you must click this button. If you do not click this button, nobody will hear anything. They'll see the video, but they won't hear it. And once you select what you want to share, you have to click this blue share button on the bottom right-hand corner of the share screen. Do we have any questions so far?
Yeah, in that case, could I comment over the video or while the video is going on? Or also in the case of a PowerPoint, which I will do, it would be helpful if I could add my own comments as the PowerPoint is in progress, as they're moving from screen to screen. Is that doable while I'm in Zoom?
Yes, but what I recommend is if you want to make comments while a video is playing, that you pause it. The reason being is that I believe this is the case, that if you speak, if you use your microphone while the system sound is playing, it mutes the system sound. So that means the video, the audio from the video will get muted while you're speaking.
Now, the video will also be visible, even though I've stopped it. I've freezed it. It's still on the screen, and they can hear me speak.
Correct. Yes. You could also use annotation tools, which I'll show you in a few moments, because the annotation tools are, it's like, so imagine you have cellophane on top of your screen and you're writing on that cellophane with these annotation tools. So it's a layer, the annotation layer is on top of everything else, which means you can annotate over a video, you can annotate over a PowerPoint slide, you can annotate over a web page, or you can annotate on the whiteboard. It doesn't matter what it is that you're annotating on, because that annotation layer it's like a clear layer that's on top of everything. And that does also create some problems, which I'll show you in a moment as well. Other questions before we move on? Audrika, anything you want to add?
I have a question.
Sure.
I just want to clarify. So if I'm using my desktop and I want to show a video, I have to also go to this, I can't really read it on my screen, but it looks like there's a little microphone there. I have to click that?
No, not the microphone.
I can't see that, what that, oh, it looks like a speaker. Is that what, I don't know what that is.
You're talking about this icon?
Yes, yes.
No, that's not the icon that's circled. It's the one above it. It's the little check bigger
Oh,
right here. This is the same thing right here. It says share computer sound.
okay. So even though I'm on my desktop, I still have to click on share computer sound,
Correct, but only if you're sharing a video.
which I most likely will. So,
Yeah.
okay.
So
Thank you.
you don't have to share sound if you're not sharing a video, but if you're sharing a video, you must share sound. Share the computer
Okay,
sound.
thank you.
So when you're sharing a PowerPoint, you can be speaking the whole time because there's no audio with it. You're just showing the PowerPoint.
Correct. And you don't need to share computer sound for a PowerPoint.
Good, thank you.
All right, any other questions before we move on? Because this is a little tricky. You know, some people don't get this right away or they get confused because especially when you're looking at this first square, it's showing you what's on your desktop. So if it's not something you're used to looking for, you might get confused, and a lot of people do. And then the whole idea of, oh, well, I need to share my Google Chrome page. So you click that. And then in the middle of doing that, you're like, oh, let me open up this PowerPoint. And your students say, oh, we can't see that. And then you're like, I don't know, I don't understand why. So that this is something that you have to really internalize, that when you're sharing, you can share a specific window and only that window, or you can share your desktop/screen, and that shares everything, even the stuff you may not want them to see.
If I can clarify too, if I open, let's say, a PowerPoint in advance, the PowerPoint would become another square that I can just go directly to. So is that correct? Like that basically
Exactly.
my preparation should be to bring up everything before I start the Zoom class, before I want to share the screen. So
Yeah.
it's already populated and all I have to do is just click on it and it'll pop right into the shared screen.
Exactly. Thank you for mentioning that. That's an important thing as well. You have limited time in your classes, and because you're using technology, you have something that takes time away from your teaching, especially if you have to go searching your computer for files that you're looking to share. So if you set all of this up before the class begins, it simplifies everything. It saves you time. And like you said, the windows will all appear if they're already open. Now, again, you can share your desktop and none of that matters. You can, whatever's open will be accessible to you. But if you're going to share your desktop, just be aware that it shares everything that's on your screen. So you'll want to make sure that you take away stuff that you don't want students to see, like your bank statements and that sort of thing.
Kenny, I just also wanted to clarify. So if I'm playing like a YouTube video or something like that, then I would have to click share computer sound.
Yes.
And if I'm playing even like a separate, let's say if I had like a saved video file or something like that, I would still have to share computer sound for both of those cases.
It doesn't matter what the source of the video is. If you want to share the sound from the video, you have to click share computer sound. So that would include YouTube, that would include Blackboard, that would include Google Drive, that would include QuickTime, or any other desktop player, VLC player, whatever you have on your computer. And that's true in Windows as well. It's not just Mac. All right, I'm gonna go to the next one. So this is what it looks like when you're sharing your screen. And this is just a PowerPoint. I forget where this PowerPoint, it was actually from one of my classes at TC. So when you share your screen, you see this thing at the top. You have one on your screen right now that looks a little different because you're a participant. But when you're the host, this is what it looks like. Now it can move. You can move it around the screen. It's not stuck there. And sometimes it does block important things like tabs on your browser and that sort of thing. But you have access to a lot of different the tools, and then you have more as well. And more just opens up a menu of additional options. So for example, if you need to click on the chat, you have to go to more. If you want to record, you have to go to more. If you want to open breakout rooms, you have to go to more. And then there's a few other things here. You can also share computer sound after the fact. So if you forgot to hit it when you shared your desktop, and you're realizing, oh, the audio is not playing, you just come into more, click share computer sound, and that should activate that. Annotate. So the annotate button opens up this bar that's kind of a floating bar that you can move around. And one thing I want to point out is this mouse button, which gives you your cursor. When you have other things selected, you do not have access to the cursor, which means, for example, if I am drawing something, I can't use my mouse to move forward in my PowerPoint because that requires the cursor. I can use the keyboard, but I can't use the mouse. I have to click on mouse to then be able to move forward in the slides.
What is the keyboard command for using the mouse?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Well, there's ways of using the keyboard where you can substitute using a mouse or other.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking about in
It goes
PowerPoint.
back to the old DOS. I was brought up on the IBM DOS system, so I mean.
Well, if you're in a PowerPoint, you can move ahead and back through your slides using the arrow keys on your keyboard.
Okay.
So if you use the arrow key, so I can go like this with my arrow key, or I can use the cursor. But if I'm going to turn on my annotation so you can see. So if I'm drawing and I hit the button to move forward, nothing happens because I'm drawing. But if I hit mouse, then it moves forward. All right. So
is that annotation key? I mean, is that drawing icon sufficiently precise if I wanted to write math equations?
absolutely.
Can you do that Etch-a-Sketch drawing that you're doing right now on a Microsoft system? Because I've had problems doing that.
Can you say it,
done?
Paul? Say it again.
Can you do that type of drawing? It's like the Etch-a-Sketch type drawing. Can you do that on a Microsoft system?
Yes.
Because I've had problems doing that. All right. Okay. So that can be done. All right.
Designed to work on all platforms. It also works on an iPad. So for example, if you share a whiteboard on an iPad and you have the Apple Pencil, you can get even more precise in drawing. Now, I mean, in terms of how precise you can draw on these, it's limited by the interface. So using a trackpad or using a mouse is not the best way to be able to write out a formula. Now I can do text as well, but you're not really going to easily be able to do a lot of symbols to make a complex formula.
If I wanted to share, somebody said if I attached a drawing tablet,
Yes.
which is easier and more precise,
Yes, you can do that.
I could somehow put it, how would I, once it's attached, how do I get it to show on my screen?
So if you're using, like, for example, Wacom tablet, which is,
Yeah.
it's like having, it's like using an iPad with a pencil, but it's connected to the computer. Once you connect that Wacom tablet to the computer, it becomes an interface device, and you can use that to draw on the screen via the tablet.
So I would show the whiteboard, I would pick whiteboard, or I would pick device.
Well, you can annotate over anything, but you would want to set it up to annotate, and then the pencil actually can navigate. You can navigate using that pencil that it comes with, or
Okay.
the stylus. Let's call it that. But that's getting a little too tangential for what we're talking about here. But if you're interested in going down that road, you can speak to me privately.
Sure, sorry.
So what we have here now is just the whiteboard, just so you can see illustrated the drawing tools. There's different drawing tools. You can draw lines, you can draw shapes, arrows, different styles of shapes. So here's a good example of very simple math formulas that you can write by hand using your mouse or using your trackpad. Again, if this gets, if we're talking about high school math, I don't know if you're going to want to do trigonometry on this, but very, very simple algebra or grade school level math, you could probably do that pretty easily just using the mouse. There's stamp tools, and I will show you what the stamp tools look like. So there's arrows that you can put there, check marks, X's, and you can change the colors of things as well, hearts. There's a spotlight tool. So for example, I can highlight something, and your students have access to this as well. So you all have an annotation toolbar that you can access as well. So if you want to go ahead and do that now, and maybe try the spotlight tool and select the arrow and just point at something, it will also have your name associated with it. So your annotation tool is under view options, I think.
And that's something that you can enable or unenable depending on what you want?
You can disable the annotations, the participant annotations, yes.
I don't have highlight.
You don't see spotlight
Mouse.
or arrow?
Arrow.
Yeah, try arrow. Yeah.
Cool. Oh, that is cool.
Okay, so let's move on. You can change the colors, the line widths, the fonts. There is a text tool, as I said earlier. And then here's the caveat. Because this is a layer on top of everything, if you want to move to the next slide, you probably want to clear the drawings first, because you'll see now when I move to the next slide, here's an annotation that stayed behind. So I have to go into annotation tool and clear to get rid of that. You can also save your annotation layer. So if you've done something that you want to save as like a screenshot, you can, there's a save. Hold on. Right here next to clear, there's a save button. And so you can download a copy of what's currently on the annotation layer.
Kenny, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yes.
So we have a couple of people in the chat saying that they don't have any of those options. Do you think that they vary by device?
Possibly.
Can I chime in about that? I use Zoom on my iPad, and I have really limited abilities through the app. Like if you're using it on an app, like for example on your iPad or maybe on your phone, you don't see all the things the same way.
Right. Correct. The iPad and iPhone versions of Zoom are a bit different. They don't feature all of the same tools and feature sets that the desktop versions have. They function a little differently. But I do believe that a host can annotate even on the iPad. I just don't remember exactly where the options are. And I don't know if the participants can do that on an iPad. All right. So repos. I'm going to disable the annotations now so we don't get out of control. So you'll see on this screen, this is the participant view. And you can see this on this green bar on top should look very much like what you have on yours. And these are the options that you have to control from your side, what you see. So you see the annotate button here. Again, you may or may not see that button based on the machine that you're on, but I'm pretty sure almost all Macs and PCs will have the annotation tool. The other thing here is side-by-side mode. Now this is also only something that the participants have and only when you're sharing your screen. So you can see here, this is what side-by-side mode looks like. You have the videos on the right side and you have what you're sharing on the left, and there's this line here in the middle that can move left or right. So you can make the presentation smaller and expose more of the videos, or you can move this to the right and make the presentation larger and expose fewer videos. You can also toggle between speaker view and gallery view. If it's speaker view, you'll just see one video, just whoever's speaking at that moment. In gallery view, you'll see, depending on where this middle piece is, you'll see maybe 3, maybe 6, maybe 9 videos, but you're not going to see the full class in this view. Questions so far about anything we've covered so far? All right. All right, so next thing here is polls. In order to use polls, you have to turn the poll feature on, and to turn it on, you have to do that using the zoom.us website and go into your account, into the account settings, and look for the polling feature and turn that on. Sorry about that. Let me turn off. There we go. So once you have the poll feature on, you'll see the polling button in your session. You click the polling button and you'll get a screen that looks like this. You can add a question. When you add the question, you have 2 options, a single choice or a multiple choice question. So you can ask the question, type the question here and the responses here, and then you can either save that or you can add a second question. If you have multiple questions, they'll all pop up at the same time. But you can do a poll, finish it, and then you can start a new poll with a fresh question. You can also, using the website, preload these poll questions. Once you finish setting up the poll question, this is what it will look like. You'll hit the launch poll button and it will be in progress. Then the students will see the question. And here's a poll I have. So that should have just popped up. You should be able to respond to the poll. And all right, that's good enough. I'm going to end the poll. And then I have to share the results with you, otherwise you don't see them. So now I share the results. You can see the share poll results. We can talk about this. And when I'm done talking about it, stop share. And then I can relaunch the poll or I can just close it. So this is what it looks like when the poll is in process and the share results is, or when you end the poll. and then you share the results, and this is what it will look like from your end. And this is what
Kenny, is there a
poll.
way to store those polls?
Can you store the polls?
So in other words, is it just basically
No, it's ephemeral.
ad hoc like? Yeah.
It's ephemeral, but if you record the session, the poll gets recorded.
So I can really basically just do one poll and that's it. And then do a second one, but I don't have access to the first one or the results.
You can take a screenshot.
But it's not stored anywhere, like in a database or.
I don't think so. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think so.
Okay, so it's just kind of like, you know, like an ad hoc sort of a thing.
Yeah, if you want to store results, I would say use a separate tool like
Okay,
Mentimeter, Poll Everywhere, Socrative, something like that, and
okay.
then you can have the results stored for later.
Kenny, one quick question. So you said like you could set up this poll in advance. So which would you just do it on Zoom in advance of the class?
So you have to do it in the back end.
Okay.
So do you see the back end here, the website?
Yes.
So if you go into the website, you go into your account and click on settings.
Okay.
And scroll all the way to the bottom. No, I'm sorry. I take that back. You go into meetings.
Okay.
And let's say you go into a meeting room and see where it says you have not created any poll yet.
Yes.
So this is a meeting that I have set up. No polls are created, but I can add a poll. So this is
great. Okay, thank you.
You preset the polls.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
And then you would see that as an option when you clicked on polling to.
Yeah, when you click the polling button, that poll will come up, and then you can start that poll.
And you can only program one in for the class.
You can put in multiples, but I think I can't remember if they all go at the same time or if you can do them one at a time. I'm sorry, I don't remember off the top of my head how that would function, but I can find out for you. Or if you go to the support.zoom.us, you can look up the polling feature there, and there's a whole document that explains all of those nuances.
Thank you.
So when you want to record, there's the record button here on the bottom. You hit the record button and you'll see this appear on the top. So you want to make sure that if you're supposed to be recording something, that you see this recording icon appear at the top of the share window. You can pause the recording and you can stop the recording, and then you can start another recording if you want to. When you record, it does not record breakout rooms. Breakout rooms can be recorded, but they have to be recorded from within the breakout room, which means if you want breakout rooms recorded, you have to allow one individual from each room to be able to record, and then ask them to record that breakout room.
Do they have to be a co-host?
They don't have to be a co-host, but there is, in the participant window, you go over their name and select more, and there's an option there for allow record. And then those recordings get stored on their device, on their computer. This does not work on an iPad, by the way, or an iPhone.
I'm sorry, Ken, one other question. So if you have, say, 4 students in a breakout room, would you just grant access to one of those students to record the session, or to all of them?
You only need one person to record.
Okay, thank you.
And then what you would have them do is once the class is over, once you exit the class, it will process that recording. It takes a few minutes for it to process. And then that recording will be located in your documents folder on your computer. And it doesn't matter if it's a Windows computer or Mac, they're both in the documents folder. In the documents folder, you'll see a folder called Zoom.
Oh, cool.
In the Zoom folder, you'll see a folder with a timestamp on it. So you want to find the folder that has the timestamp for the session you were just in. And in that folder, it's many, many folders within. In that folder, you'll see a few different files. You'll see an audio file, and I believe it would be, it's either an MP3 or an M4A. I don't remember which format it uses, but it's an audio only version. There is a copy of the transcript, and there is an MP4 file. And the MP4 file is the video, and it will say zoom_0.mp4. So you'll want to ask them to also rename the file, because zoom_0 is terrible. It tells you nothing. And not only that, but if you have multiple people sending you files with all the same name, you can't save them in this together because it's the same file name, and you'll never know which one's which. So you use some sort of naming schema, and just tell your students to follow that naming schema.
Kenny, are we being asked to record our session?
No, nobody's asking you to record anything.
Okay.
However, if you want to record it for yourself or for your students, then this is how you would do it.
Okay.
And then, sorry, you said it would save in a doc, so like on your desktop, basically, it would.
So it's a folder on your computer called Documents. Every Mac and every PC has a folder called Documents, and then inside that
Okay,
folder,
yeah, got it. Thank you. And just, sorry, one more question. If there's like a ton of people on the call, for example, like let's say 50, I don't know, I won't have that, but just in case, and you recorded it, would all the little videos of every person also record?
When you record, when you hit record, it's recording essentially what you're seeing. So if you're in gallery mode, it's recording in gallery mode. If you're in speaker mode, it's recording in speaker mode. And if you're in gallery mode and you see 12 videos, that's what you'll see in the video. Now, if you then if you go to page 2, that's what you'll see in the video, that you went to page 2.
I see. Is there a way to change how many videos are on the screen at a time?
So the maximum is 49, but you have to have a pretty powerful computer for that. Most computers can do up to, I think, 24, 25. And iPads can do 9, I think, or it's either 9 or 16. I think it's 9. Some older computers might be limited to 16. Just keep in mind, the more videos you have on your screen, the more it will slow down your computer. And I've had issues lately with I'm in a course and there's 60 some odd people in the course, and when I try to display all those videos, it actually crashes my Zoom. And it's a very brand new computer, and it's a very powerful computer, and it still does it. So more is not always better.
Got it.
All right, so the last thing we're going to talk about today is breakout sessions, breakout rooms. Breakout rooms, you would use these primarily if you wanted like small group discussions or think, pair, shares, things like that. And you have 2 options when you open up these rooms. You can automatically assign students into rooms, and it just randomly pairs them up in whatever permutation that you select, or you can manually create those rooms. So for example, if you had, let's say, 10 participants and you split them into 2 rooms, it will assign 5 people per room. If you have 10 participants and you split them up into 5 rooms, it puts 2 per room. If you do this manually, all you have to do is say how many rooms you want, and then you can manually assign students into those rooms. So for example, here in this session, we had 6 people and 2 breakout rooms. So I can select who I want to go into this breakout room, and then I hit assign on breakout room 2, and I can select the other people to go in there. The manual process can be, it can be a lot if you have a lot of students. But it's if you have specific groups that you are assigned, for
And Luke,
example, then you have to do it this way. You can't do it automatically because it's random.
Now, you can set this up before you get to it.
No.
You can't. You have to do it while you're with the class.
The only way you can set up breakout rooms ahead of time is if everybody that's attending has a Zoom account and they're invited using that Zoom account. Going forward, that might be possible once CUNY implements their system, because all students will have Zoom accounts. But at this time, no, it's not possible to do it in advance. And not only that, every time you do a Zoom session, you have to do this again.
Kenny, can you see all the breakout rooms while they're going on?
Yes, as the host, you can see all the breakout rooms. You can enter and leave them at will.
Oh, that is so cool.
that's so great.
So once you've assigned the rooms, this is what it will look like. You can move somebody to a different room.
Wow.
Rename the rooms if you want to, if they have team names or something like that. You can delete rooms. You can add more rooms down here on the bottom. And there's some options you can select. So you can move participants into breakout rooms automatically, which is probably not a bad idea to have that selected. Because when you open the rooms, it will have otherwise it will have a button for them to join the breakout. If you select move all participants into breakout rooms automatically, there's no button, they just go right in. Allow participants to return to the main session at any time gives them the ability to leave the breakout session at will. If you don't want them to have that power, uncheck this. And I don't remember what the default settings are, so forgive me if this is not the default. You can also set a timer on these breakout rooms to close after a certain amount of time.
All right, that's good. The time limit is good because I need that.
Plus, if you manually close the breakout rooms, you can set a countdown timer. Once you hit close, that gives them 60 seconds, 2 minutes, or whatever you want. It's basically saying, ringing a bell, 1 more minute, and then it will automatically pull them out.
Like you could do on a stopwatch on a cell phone.
Yeah.
Kenny, when you enter one of these breakout rooms that you've manually created, is it comparable to like walking around to a table of like 2 or 3 people and having like a conference? Like you can interact with them just as we are here, and then go back to another room or not?
Exactly. So I don't know if I have the, you also have the ability to, if you want to create new groups, you can do that just by hitting recreate, and it will allow you to create, replace all the groups with new ones.
That's a great ability.
So I was just checking to see, I don't know why I didn't put in the screenshot for what it looks like after you open the rooms, but when you open the rooms, if you click breakout rooms again, you'll see this same window, but instead of open rooms, it will be close rooms, and you'll see a join button for each of these. So you can join breakout room 1. It will bring you into the breakout session. You'll see whoever is in that session. You can all communicate. Everybody that's in the session has complete control within that session. They can all share their screen. They can all chat. They can, if you've allowed them to record, they can record. And then you can move to another. You still have the breakout rooms button. You can move to another breakout session. You also have a function. I don't know why I don't have the screenshot, but there's another button you can press to send a broadcast message. And so you can send a quick message and it goes out to all of the rooms simultaneously. So you can, if you want to give them a 5-minute warning, for example.
Okay, as an option to not being able to do that, to set up the breakout rooms while I'm with the class, yes. I could type out something on Blackboard, setting up the rooms, and then they would know where to go. In other words, I could work it out on a separate page, put it on
No,
Blackboard, have them print that out on their own before we get into the class, and then they know where they're gonna go.
no, because you have to assign them into the breakout. Like they can't put
They
them.
can't do it. It's not like I can say, okay, class, let's break up into these groups. You can't do that. You have to do them one by one. You have to pick them up. Mhm.
No, it was an accident.
And
It was a mistake. Thank you.
Kenny,
Yes.
yeah, quick question. So like, just from your experience with this, like, if you're posing like just one or two questions for the students to discuss in these breakout rooms, what's a good like time frame? So in order they have a chance to say hello to each other, but then really get into the meat and potatoes of the task. What would you say, Kenny?
How much time should they have in the
Yeah,
breakout?
how much time should they be in the breakout rooms, you think?
Well, for one thing, it depends on how many of them there are. Let's say you have a group of 3.
Right,
Based on what the prompt is, you have to think about how much time each person needs to speak on that prompt,
right,
and then add in another couple of minutes because they're not gonna get to it right away,
right.
and maybe another couple of minutes at the end for them, final comments, and then
Okay,
see what that totals up. You may not have that much time, so you might have to kind of adjust things.
right.
You can also be very explicit in your instructions about, don't waste any time. There's not a lot of time in these discussion forums. Make sure that they are very, very clear about what they're supposed to be doing in that
Yeah,
room, because
right.
you can't be in all of the rooms at the same time. And if you've put the prompt on a slide, once they go into the breakout session, they don't see that slide anymore. So you have to make sure that they are absolutely clear about what they're doing in that room.
Okay,
So you might think about, assigning each of the groups sort of like a lead or something like that, and email them, a breakout guide, a breakout session guide. If it needs to get this complicated, and it all depends on what you're trying to do. If it's very simple and you just have one prompt and they're just responding to that prompt, you may not need to go to those lengths. But if it's a more complicated breakout session, you might need a little guide for them to, so you can have breakout session 1 and have all the different prompts and things that you're asking them to do. Some people will have much longer breakout sessions, 30 minutes or an hour long, because they're given an activity. And in those cases, they would need some sort of document to help guide them through that process.
okay. Thank you. And these, the directions, like a guide to using breakout rooms, is that part of the documents that was posted, Kenny? Like,
The guide to using breakout rooms.
like just information, like, because you said a lot of valuable points today, like just something that we can refer to as we're setting up our breakout rooms,
So,
like a guide or something.
yeah, that link that Audrika sent out earlier,
Okay,
that has our webinars on it, there are links there as well
okay,
to additional information. So I'm gonna pull it up in just a second. So this is the page that she posted.
okay,
And on this page, you'll see there's a bunch of different sections. If you go down to the Zoom section and click on that, you'll see a recording from March, a recording from May. Oh, I guess I haven't posted the recording from August yet, but I will. And underneath that, you'll see additional help resources.
okay,
And then
great.
getting started with breakout rooms is right there. So you click on that, it takes you to Zoom's help document on breakout rooms. There's a video, and then there's additional information. So everything I'm talking about right now and more is here.
Okay,
Quick
thank you.
question, it may sound silly, but if there's an odd number of students in the class, will it put one person in a breakout room by themselves because you said put it into 2, or will it do let's say you have 11 people and you put it in
Yes.
5?
So it will assign the odd person to one of the rooms.
Okay.
Any, I wonder if I could share something I've done with the breakout rooms that I found helpful.
Absolutely, Marcia. I'd love to hear.
Yeah, worked very well. In lieu of recording what's happening in the breakout rooms, I asked each group to assign a recorder. Recorder created a file, put it on their desktop. When we went back to the whole session, each recorder could then share a screen, show that file, and talk about it.
So they were recording, like video recording the session, or they were
So manually
no.
creating a file for the group.
Right, so it's just written notes you're talking about.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Scripting
Like
notes.
Yep,
And
you can
that
do that.
file
You can also
was put
create a
on
Google Doc that's shared with everybody that has written
They
notes.
could.
Yep.
But I wanted them to bring that back to the whole group, so we had a sharing of the breakout groups,
Yes.
and they had some kind of a document to share screen with the whole group to express their thoughts.
Right. Yes.
Am I being clear here, Kenny, or?
Yes, I totally get it. You know, somebody took notes during their breakout session, then they shared their screen so everybody could see those notes when they came back into the main session and discuss it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, Marcia, before you go away, I just wanted to say, you knew my mother.
Oh, oh, we're not done yet.
When you lived in Jamaica, Queens.
So I just want just a quick time check. It's just after 2. I have a couple of other things to go over, but I understand if you have to go, by all means. But if you want to stick around, I just have a few best practices that I'd like to share with you. So one of the things is regarding logistics. It's very important that you make sure that you're using the most recent version of Zoom, particularly because there are updates, security updates that happen all the time. And you can refer back to one of the earlier webinars to see how you check for updates. I'm not going to spend time to go over that at the moment. Make sure you test your connection and practice before class. You can do that with us. You can do that with somebody else, with family, with friends, with colleagues, or you can use zoom.us/test. You can ask students to do the same thing. Feel free to offer a practice session for students so that they can learn Zoom. This would be even more important for first years. Err on the side of extra security. You know, I believe it's September 27th. Zoom will be mandating either a password or that you've enabled the waiting room. And if you don't select either, it will automatically create the waiting room for you, enable the waiting room for you. I definitely recommend at least one of those two. You don't necessarily need to use both, but if you want extra security, you can use both at the same time. And do not post your links publicly, particularly on social media. I was in a conference, somebody posted a link in Twitter, and we got Zoom bombed really badly. Make sure you monitor the participants list for suspicious looking people. Just every so often scan the list and make sure there's nobody in the class that's not supposed to be there. If you see somebody suspicious, you can send a private message to them or you can remove them. Just remember, if you remove somebody from your class, they can't get back in. I suggest that for you find a quiet, well-lit place to run the meeting from. Try to eliminate background noise and stay well-lit. You know, don't be in a dark room where you're silhouetted, and try to avoid lights behind you. Lights should be in front of you. And if you don't want people to see your space, if your computer is capable, use the virtual backgrounds. They're fun, they can be fun, and you know, they're great. For example, during the lockdown, I was staying at my partner's apartment and he has a very small studio. And so there were times where he was teaching a yoga class and I had to run a meeting, so I had to be in the bathroom. And so I used a virtual background so nobody knew that I was in the bathroom.
Yeah. Kenny, I have one question could I throw in, because now you're talking about practices.
Yes.
Last semester, occasionally I would have a student who was Zoom bombed.
Yes.
And couldn't, you know, who left the session.
Yes.
The only thing I could ask them to do, send an email, is for them to sign in again. Is there anything else that can help when a student is bombed out?
Well, Zoom bombing is different. Zoom bombing is when somebody comes into your session that doesn't belong there. And typically what they do, what Zoom bombers do, is they will share their screen and display pornography. And they also play loud music to be disruptive. Now, I don't know what you're talking about when you say a student got bombed. What does that mean?
They were dropped. They were dropped from the session.
So there's maybe their computer crashed or Zoom crashed or their internet went down. If the students fall out, they should be able to get back in. If they can't get back in, then they should send you an email or something, but they can't get in. But
They can re-sign in.
They should be able to get back in.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
A couple of other best practices for synchronous online sessions. Use inclusive principles when planning synchronous sessions. So that can include things like setting ground rules for discussion to create a safer or brave space. Establishing a climate in the session that is conducive for all students. Plan for some sort of informal interaction or icebreaker activities. Online learning can be very impersonal, can be very dehumanizing. So giving a little bit of social time for students is really helpful for them. So allow some informal time, ask your students to share something about how they're doing or what's going on in their lives, or give them some sort of an icebreaker activity to kind of break the tension and maybe lighten the mood a little bit. Consider structuring your discussions. Having just total freeform discussions doesn't work well in Zoom. People just being able to unmute themselves and speak, it works well in a session like this where it's a very small group, but if you have a class of 25 or more people, it's not going to work so great. So you want to have some sort of system in place for how you allow students to comment and share and participate in discussions. Keep students engaged, make it as interactive as possible, and keep the pace lively. Incorporate polls and or writing reflections and prompts so that they're actually doing something, that they're not just sitting there listening. And if you have a long class, like a 2 or 3 hour class, you might consider breaking that up a bit. So offer breakout sessions, bathroom breaks, or you can assign an activity where they go away and they come back. You can use the chat feature to collect questions during the class session. So if you don't, if you're in the midst of a lecture and you don't, it's really hard sometimes to monitor the chat while you're lecturing or while you're sharing your screen, particularly when you're sharing your screen. So you can ask students to post in the chat, collect the questions, and then pause every once in a while, go back through the questions and ensure that every question gets responded to. Or maybe you can have a student monitor the chat. So every so often you stop, you ask that student, are there any questions that we need to consider?
Kenny, where is it that you can make a rule in the chat room that they're only responding or posing questions to the teacher and not to each other? Is there a way to?
So there's in the settings, which you have to log into the website to access that particular setting, there's a setting that controls who they can send messages to. So you can have it message the host only, or the host and everyone only, or you can allow private messages between students.
Thank you.
And then finally, have a plan B. No matter what it is, have a plan B, because sometimes things just don't work out the way that we hoped. And then last slide here. Oh, no, I guess that was the last slide. That's it. That's it. Oh, somebody's waiting to get in. So any other questions? Wow.
That was a great overview. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it.